Star Wars Dark Empire picks up 10 years after the events of Return of the Jedi and finds Han Solo, Leia Organa, Chewbacca, and C-3PO on a rescue mission for Luke Skywalker and Lando Calrissian, who during a raid over the planet Coruscant have become trapped on the war-torn planet after their Star Destroyer crashed. Han maneuvers the Falcon between the masses of wreckage above Coruscant, warning the rebel frigates behind them of the wreckage, but the rebel star is hit, causing it to be destroyed and leaving only the Antari 6 standing. Han thinks that they should have stayed away since Luke and Lando don't need their help, but Leia tells him that they lost their signal, so they probably are in big trouble. The Antari 6 holds orbit as the Falcon is rushed by some Imperial fighters that race right by them, not even caring for them. Han follows the fighters, finding that they are headed to the Imperial City as well, which is exactly where Luke's last signal came from. Han knows that from all of the smoke, Luke put his ship down right in the middle of the action. On the ground, the war still rages between the sects of the Empire battling for control with the Emperor's inner circle. Leia soon spots what's left of the Liberator, Luke's Star Destroyer. Imperial walkers keep the rebel soldiers pinned down as Han and Leia take to the turrets, with Leia remembering her Jedi training, feeling the Force inside her as she blasts the walker, destroying it. Falcon lands and regroups with the New Republic soldiers, with 3PO reunited with R2-D2 and Han with Lando, who thinks that Han and Leia went on another honeymoon and took their time. Lando explains that Luke took off after they crashed, saying something about the dark side still being very powerful in the palace, but Lando is more worried about the renegades and the scavengers, since thanks to the wreckages everywhere, junk traders from all over the galaxy have been drawn to the battle. Soon some arrive, using hot-wired battle droids to attack the New Republic soldiers. Han isn't happy the scavengers are between them and the Falcon, meaning that he's got to shoot his way to his ship before they pick it apart. Lando warns the heroes of the Nex, a group of Saborian battle dogs which the Junkers unleash, meaning that the heroes now have their hands full. The dogs are suddenly thrown into the sky and Han thanks his wife, but Leia says she didn't use the Force to do that as a familiar shadowy figure raises their hand, destroying the droids. Out of the shadows steps Luke Skywalker, who confronts the giant walker, shrugging off its blaster fire and redirecting them back at the machine with his lightsaber, destroying it as he remembers Yoda's words of size not mattering. The only difference is one's mind. As the walker falls defeated, Luke reunites with his sister and friends, telling them that he found clues in the palace and needs to stay, but the rest need to leave quickly. Han refuses, especially after traveling light years to find him. Luke says that there is a great disturbance in the Force and something or someone is using the dark side with unbelievable power. Leia refuses to leave as well, and Han says that they will be right there with him, but Luke tells him that this isn't just some gun battle, since an evil knows he's there and what happens is his destiny, and it's already begun. In orbit, the Antari 6 sees a hyperspace wormhole open, spewing forth an energy storm which hits the surface. Luke demands his friends leave or be destroyed, wanting Han and Leia to know their children are the future of the Jedi. Luke walks towards the storm as R2 goes with his master. The Falcon speeds off from the storm as Luke and R2 are sucked up into the maelstrom. Han reassures Leia that Luke knows what he's doing, but Leia isn't so sure about that, since when she looked at him, Luke made her afraid. The Falcon heads into hyperspace and to Pinnacle Base, as on the 5th moon of Dashucha, the captured Star Destroyer Emancipator orbits along with the Rebel Alliance fleet. Admiral Akbar meets with Mon Mothma, telling her of his recent recon mission and how something big is happening at the center of the galactic core, since ships from both sides of the Imperial Civil War are gathering there. Akbar wonders if there has been any news from Commander Skywalker, but Mon Mothma tells him the bad news, telling him that Skywalker's destroyer went down above Coruscant and Han and Leia Solo have been sent to find him, but they have been radio silenced ever since, but they should be back soon. Akbar suddenly gets information stating that the Millennium Falcon has arrived back on Pinnacle Base. The Falcon heads down to the planet and docks at the base, telling Rebel Command of what happened, which causes Mon Mothma to call an emergency meeting of the command staff, filling them in on Akbar's findings of the Great War Fleet amassing at the core of the galaxy. General Riken has reasons to believe that it's the work of the Darkside genius, and not only that, but their scouts report sightings of a diabolical machine called the World Devastators, giant machines of war that are currently heading to worlds sympathetic to the rebellion. The command show images of Calamari, Akbar's homeworld, where the world destroyers make planetfall, sucking up anything and everything on the planet's surface to feed their factories within and to make weapons of war. Akbar says that this is the greatest scourge the galaxy has ever seen, greater than even the Death Star, and they must act immediately and help the people of his world reach sanctuary of the water world of Dust suture. He knows that Green and Blue squads will leave immediately, with Lando and Wedge Antilles piloting their other captured Star Destroyer against the Devastators. Lando wonders what Han can do, as Han reassures Lando that he and Wedge have got this, and he's got to brief the new fighter teams. As the council breaks up, Han and Leia get a moment alone, with Han knowing this endless war makes it seem like they haven't been alone for more than 5 minutes since they got married. Leia knows that something awful is happening to Luke and she can feel him getting farther away and they need to help him. Han thinks that they need to have time to themselves and Luke doesn't want their help and he's not about to challenge the judgment of a Jedi Knight. Luke and R2 meanwhile have found themselves on an Imperial dungeon ship, the ones Luke read about that imprisoned Jedi Knights during the Clone Wars, and they have reached their destination, the planet Biss, a world deep within the galactic core. Luke can sense that this is the dark center of the universe as the ship lands. Luke and R2 are sucked out of the ship and placed in a cage, escorted into the Great Halls where Luke senses a mind reaching out for him, filling it with a mocking laughter. Luke tells R2 that this is where his enemy awaits him as the guards demand he get out of the cage. Luke uses the Force on the men, pushing them back and warning them not to threaten him since he is there because he chooses to be. The men tell the soldiers to stand down since Luke is walking to his doom anyway. Luke heads deeper into the castle, finding the throne room where he is greeted by the very much alive Emperor Palpatine. Luke knew that somehow the man survived as Palpatine knows that Luke has grown stronger in the Force, but so has he, revealing his death on the second Death Star was not his first death, and such are the mysteries of the dark side. Palpatine says that his flesh doesn't easily support his great power and decays often, so he has need for another body, like the clone body he now currently resides in. Luke is shocked to learn that it is indeed the real Palpatine, as the villain says that the suffering he goes through changing bodies is worth it for eternal life. He wonders if Luke, now that his father is dead, has come to join him and will take his rightful place at the Sith's side. Palpatine offers to give Luke the world Devastators to command and how the rebels had years to reclaim the galaxy, but without the Jedi Knights they failed and now he has outflanked them. Working in secret, he constructed weapons no one has ever seen before. R2 hands Luke his lightsaber as Palpatine tells him that this is his destiny to succeed where his father failed. Luke begins feeling conflicted, wondering if he can defend the freedom of billions by slaying an old man as Palpatine feels his conflict growing, knowing that if he is struck down, he will live again, and maybe even inside Luke this time. Luke knows that the master strategist has foreseen this, so he decides to do something the villain would not have foreseen, dropping his saber and deciding to challenge the dark side from within. Luke bows before his new master and Palpatine wishes to celebrate their conquest. Han meanwhile visits Leia, who has been holed up in their room for days. Han hopes that she can see the galaxy is pooling together against the Empire, but Leia says that she should have listened to him and not Luke since now she hears a terrible laughter, knowing that she has lost her brother. Han thinks that Luke has more tricks up his sleeve, but Leia knows her brother is in trouble and she is needed. Han has a bad feeling about this as he hugs his wife, knowing he was told a marriage to a Jedi princess wasn't going to be easy. Leaving, Han tells Chewie to fuel the Falcon and finish the repairs, since they have a date with the dark side. Lando and Wedge meanwhile have engaged the Empire, dropping out of hyperspace extremely close to the enemy and unleashing their firepower on them. Lando breaks the blockade above Calamari, deploying his fighters to hammer the Devastators. The battle on the surface ignites as Commander Clev of the Empire is told of the attack on the Devastators, telling the confused officers that the Star Destroyers above belong to the Rebellion now, not the Empire. The officers know the X-Wings are no match for them as Clev tells his men to inform Supreme Commander Skywalker of the attack, wanting to give the rebels a taste of their power. The X-Wings engage with a series of new robotic fighters made from within the bowels of the world Devastator from the materials they have been sucking up from Calamari. A Devastator comes face to face with Lando's destroyers, forcing Lando to engage with it, but the destroyer's weapons are too powerful, causing it to begin sucking up the destroyer and breaking it apart. Lando knows that that's 2 destroyers they have lost now, telling his men to head for the escape pods. Back on Pinnacle Base, Leia is visited by a spectral vision of her father, but Darth Vader soon fades away and turns into Luke, who says that Darth Vader lives no more. He tells her to try not to find him since destiny has forced him to follow the path of their father since it was the only way. Leia knows that can't be true, as a dark presence overshadows Luke's vision and Leia begins hearing the dark side's voice cackle as it says that Luke has risked it all and lost. Leia is knocked to the ground by the Force as C-3PO arrives, finding his master has collapsed. Han meanwhile shows his new recruits around the latest Imperial fighter they got their hands on, knowing that with the battle at Calamari going awry, they will have their work cut out for them. He shows them around the E-Wing, knowing that it's a good ship and they beefed up its cannons to make it even better. Mon Mothma comes to see Han, telling him what happened to Leia as Han rushes to his wife's side, as 3PO mentions that she was babbling nonsense about Luke. Leia knows that it was true and the Force brought her closer to Luke even though he's so far away. She knows that the dark side is swallowing him whole, so they need to find him quickly. Han knows that's impossible with a number of worlds in the core, but Leia knows that the Force will lead them to him. Mon Mothma reminds Solo that Luke is probably the last fully realized Jedi Knight, and they need him and so does the galaxy. Han wonders if Luke is such a great Jedi, why does he have to keep rescuing the man? Han agrees to help, but they don't know where Luke is, but Leia isn't really in any shape to travel either. She reassures him that Luke is in the galactic core, and Han knows that's a dangerous journey and only a very few people are allowed to actually have permission to travel into the core. The group head to the Falcon, with Leia telling 3PO that he can't come and is needed on the base, but Han tells the droid to shut up and just get aboard since he can help keep the negative power couplings in check. The Falcon leaves, with Mon Mothma knowing that the New Republic depends on the survival of the Jedi Knights, and if Luke is lost to the dark side, then the Alliance is done for. Han sets coordinates for the Nalhutta system, needing to visit some old friends, but Leia isn't too pleased with it going to the Hutt's homeworld. Han though knows they aren't headed there, but to Nar Shaddaa, the spaceport moon. Arriving on the smuggler's moon, Leia knows that there has to be a bounty on their heads after she killed Jabba the Hutt, but Han's old friend Mako Spence contacts him, warning him that every hunter in the galaxy is indeed looking for him, and the Hutts have quadrupled the bounty on them. Mako says that he's more than welcome to come to him, but some hunters find the Falcon, firing on it and causing Han to speed into the city's underbelly, knowing he can't get to Mako, so Han decides to try another of his friends named Shug Ninx, since he still owes him a favor. Heading to the Carillion sector, Han tries to raise his old friend on the comm, getting a hold of Ninx, who knows he's more trouble than he's worth. Han reminds him he owes him one for saving him during his gun running days, demanding he open the chute. Ninx agrees to, so the Falcon dives into a hologram billboard and into the hidden chute behind it, where Ninx's defenses clear the hunters who pursued Han away. Han lands in the Spacer's garage, met by his friend, who is happy to see Han and Chewie are alive and well and that they apparently killed Jabba the Hutt. Han says that that was actually his wife, introducing Leia to Shug Ninx. 3PO asks if he can take an oil bath in the garage, sent on his way as Ninx tells Han that he's more than happy to put his life on the line for his friend, but things have gotten really crazy around there lately and he's currently running military hardware, and it's why Sala Zend is there building the Starlight Intruder nearby. Sala meets with Han again, knowing it's been too long. Han cuts to the chase, knowing that they need a ship that legally is allowed to go into the deep core world, and he'll pay 100,000 credits to whomever can do it. Sala knows that the Starlight Intruder can do the run, more interested in Leia, learning that her and Han are married. Sala feels sorry for Leia since he's a scoundrel and will break her heart, but Han knows that Leia loves scoundrels, wanting to get on with their mission, but Ninx says that the intruder needs some of the fancy power couplings that Han might have stashed away in his old apartment, hoping that Chewie can still use a hydro spanner in the meantime. Leia isn't too happy about this as later, her and Han head into the markets and towards Han's old apartment. Han thinks the city has fallen on bad times as they avoid some more bounty hunters. An old vagrant woman recognizes Leia as the Jedi, saying her name is Vima and she knows the Force, hoping the daughter of the Force can forgive her. Leia wonders who she is, so Vima explains for 200 years she herself was a Jedi, but she betrayed her own and tried to forget what happened, losing herself amongst the forgotten people as the Purge wiped the Jedi out. Yet now Leia lives and she can rekindle that fire. Han meanwhile deals with a tool seller as Vima hands Leia a box and wants Leia to have it. Han grabs Leia, knowing that they are gathering some attention there. He wonders what the box is and Leia knows that it was a gift from a Jedi as Vima has somehow disappeared. The couple head over to Han's apartment, and inside Han is greeted by his old droid ZZ, finding the droid hasn't really tidied up the place, but the droid says that there is a Mr. Fett waiting to see him, confusing Han as to who he means. Han and Leia are confronted by Boba Fett, who reveals that the Sarlacc found him somewhat indigestible, as Dengar reveals that Han's old friend Mako turned him in. Mako apologizes since the payout was too good to miss at his age. Fett says that the Hutts want Solo and Organa alive after what they did to Jabba, since they want to put the hurt on them. Han fires at the Hunters, escaping with Leia as he tells Leia that Ninx will need to use the cheap couplings from now on. The couple race through the markets, with Han saying that he knows the city like the back of his hand, but leads them into a dead-end landing terrace, trapping them. Taking refuge behind a pillar as they fire, the couple keep the Hunters at bay as a nearby Hutt is hit by an explosion, throwing him from the floater he was on, which Han and Leia commandeer, racing away from Fett, who along with Dengar and the other Hunters head for the Slave 2. Han and Leia soon spot the Starlight Intruder along with the Falcon attached to the back, boarding the ship as Chewbacca covers them. Fett follows after them, knowing where their ship is headed, but since his ship is faster, it will be waiting for them in the galactic core. The intruder meanwhile is cleared all the way to Biss as Leia opens the box that Vima gave her, finding it to be an old lightsaber, which Han thinks is just some old antique. Leia knows that he'll never understand as Leia sees Luke commanding the Imperial forces, fearing that they have lost him. Lando meanwhile isn't having much luck at Calamari as the Devastator eats his Star Destroyer. Lando and Wedge make it to the last escape pod, blasting off as Wedge gets some good news thanks to Pinnacle Base sending the reserves in. White Team soon arrives, blasting through the ties with their new E-Wing fighters as they scoop up the escape pods, rescuing Lando and the others. Aboard the World Devastator Silencer 7, Commander Clev is told of a problem as the master control computer on Biss has begun shutting them down. Clev finds that impossible since they would need special codes as the silencer falls from the sky. Lando meanwhile thinks that the fighters found a weak spot and the Devastator's self-destructed, knowing whomever is in charge of the machines is an idiot and it's almost like they wanted to lose. Sala meanwhile tells Han and Leia that they are entering the deep core security zone, with Biss acknowledging their approach and they will shut down the shield when they get closer. Han tells her to take them down as the shield wall opens for them. Suddenly Slave 2 arrives behind them, with Dengar demanding the Hunter pull up since they'll crash into the security shield, but Fett knows that they are fast and they'll follow the intruder through the shield before it closes. Biss security however is too tight, spotting the Slave 2 and closing the shield, blowing off Slave 2's stabilizer wing as Dengar calls Fett an idiot, saying this is the last time he ever works with him. The Starlight Intruder docks at the Imperial docking station, with the Falcon detaching and Leia telling the worried Han to trust her and to stop being so protective. The Falcon heads towards the giant black and red fortress, followed by a patrol craft that recognizes them as an unregistered ship. Leia uses the Force to cloak them from the sensors, confusing the officers watching the scanners as the Falcon disappears, heading towards the Imperial Palace and landing. Beings there want to take the heroes as prisoners to Lord Skywalker, as two troopers find more life forms are aboard the Falcon, wanting the hangar locked down as the Falcon takes off, blasting the doors of the hangar opening and burning the troops with the engine fire. The Falcon escapes thanks to Sala and Ninx, with Han hoping that they find a hole to hide the Falcon in and wait. Leia suddenly is contacted by a vision of Luke, who tells him that this will not go well. He says that his giant sentinels will escort her to the Emperor, shocking Leia, who learns that he still lives. The heroes are taken to the cloning labs, where Luke says that his destiny is not Leia's, finding her foolish for coming. Han knows that being a Jedi was too much for Luke, but the Jedi shuts him up, since these things are beyond his simple mind. Han keeps goading Luke as 3PO reveals that R2's main programming was erased, demanding to know how Luke could do that to him, as Luke is told Palpatine wants to see his guests. Luke demands that their weapons be taken, but Han refuses, forcing Luke to reveal he has lost his robotic hand as he uses it to force the blaster from his friend's hand. Luke reveals that they are making him a new hand as he demands that Leia give him the lightsaber. Leia ignites the blade, told by the arriving Palpatine to strike her brother down and join him. Leia attacks one of the sentinels that try and grab her husband, cutting its arm off, telling Luke that they are leaving with him now. Palpatine blows up her saber with a mere gesture of the Force, telling her she's not worthy of that weapon, but is happy to have both the brother and sister Jedi for himself now, knowing that Luke is strong in the Force and learned well, whereas Leia is inexperienced, yet she holds the key to the future. Palpatine knows that she'll teach Leia things she never imagined, wanting Luke to bring his sister and their friends since he wants to show them the future of the galaxy in his clones. Tapping into the dark side for the first time, Leia yanks a light hanging from the ceiling, dropping it on Palpatine, but he merely destroys it with the Force, impressed with the woman's first steps towards the dark side. He shocks her with the Force lightning, causing her to fall unconscious and Han to think that Leia has been killed. Palpatine knows that she has been disciplined as Han punches Luke, calling him a traitor as Leia is carted off. Luke grabs his former friend's throat, telling him to stop for Leia's sake. Han thinks that he's become worse than Vader, but Luke tells Han he understands nothing of what is happening, and he's trying to save the galaxy. Han knows that he'll kill Luke himself, and while Luke knows he may have to die, he assures Han that it won't be him who does the deed. Sala, meanwhile, has concealed the Falcon inside the Hyperspace Marauder, a ship owned by her friend Lo Khan, who knows the woman owes him big time for this, and Sala thinks that Solo owes her since the intruder was impounded by BIS security. Lo Khan knows that she ain't going to collect on that debt from Solo, as the group begin talking about what's going on BIS, since ships were never allowed to dock planetside before. Lo Khan knows that it's for the military build-up, as Han contacts Nix with a one-way communication, telling him their plan isn't working and they need to do something. They can't contact Solo, but he sends them his coordinates. So Sala and Shug run to the Falcon and head for the tower. Lo Khan warns them not to let the probes see them taking off from the Marauder, but the Falcon is spotted almost immediately by one of the giant probes. The hunter-killer drone fires on the Falcon, blasting the Marauder as Sala and Nix take off. Nix tells Sala that they can't destroy the HK droid thanks to their new deflectors, taking the Falcon into a deep dive as Leia meanwhile is brought before Palpatine, who knows everything is going according to his plan, and Leia is destined to be greater than even Luke. Palpatine demands that Leia is released from her guards so he can share his secrets with her, showing her a Jedi holocron, telling the woman to take it. Leia grabs the box, which she knows is familiar as she activates it, calling forth the image of the ancient Jedi Bodo Bass, as Palpatine explains how the Jedi would use these holocrons to record their history and teachings for future generations. Leia knows that Palpatine has no right to this device, but Palpatine knows he is the master of all Jedi, since her father was his apprentice, wanting the holocron back from the woman. Leia knows that her brother is in great danger as Palpatine calls him foolish for causing him harm, and like the Jedi before him, he will soon die. Palpatine lays down on his bed, asking Leia to stay with him, telling her that the dark side allows him to enter his clones, but he can also enter anyone, like the child Leia has growing inside of her. Leia is angered, tipping the villain's bed over before fleeing the room with the holocron. Palpatine says he has tested the woman and it's going exactly as he foresaw, as he sees that Leia stole the holocron, calling for his guards to deal with her. Luke meanwhile has his new hand fitted, told by Commander that they have lost 3 world devastators. Luke tells the man to keep this information to himself and not bother the Emperor with it, dismissing his people as Leia soon steps out of the shadows. 3PO wants Leia to tell Luke to be careful with R2 since he's putting too much data in the droid's memory. Luke thinks that his sister did well as the woman wants to leave with him and Han. Luke reassures her that he knows what he's doing, but it's good she came since her Jedi power added to his helped him break the grip of the dark side around him. Leia knows that the Emperor is merely toying with them and Luke knows that, but he reveals that he has hidden the master control codes inside R2 along with the Emperor's battle plans, wanting to get to Han and Chewie and return to Pinnacle Base. Luke can sense his sister's doubt in him, but she is unsure of it, as Luke knows that his work there is done, racing to the detention center where Han and Chewie try and carve off one of the bars to their cells, finding it unfortunate that Sala and Shug didn't get their message. He soon spots a HK droid outside watching them, but inside the droid, Shug mans its controls, having hotwired it to blast a hole in the prison cell and allow Sala to help her friends out. Han won't leave without Leia as Luke and Leia arrive at the cells. Han isn't happy to see Luke the traitor, wanting to kill him for hurting Leia, but Leia says it's all over now and they are all leaving together since they have the codes for the world devastators. Luke knows if what he is doing succeeds, the Empire will be finished forever. Han reluctantly agrees, wanting to take down the Emperor while they are there, as Sala alerts them to a security drone arriving. Shug takes the HK away from the prison as it's shot at, bits of it being blown off. Being outgunned, Sala sets the droid for autofire as they make it to the Falcon, speeding away from the turbo lasers that come online and blow apart the HK droid. On the Falcon, Luke tells the heroes to plug R2 into hyperspace comms and send the codes to the world devastators and the rebellion. Han still doesn't trust Luke and the Jedi understands, but now they are away from BIS, he has other work to do and the Alliance need to be prepared to fight their greatest battle. Han is confused, so Luke reveals that he isn't actually on the ship, he's still on BIS, disappearing as Leia realizes that it was the dark side trick of Luke's to get them away from Biss. She knows he did it to save her and Han's child, confusing Han since he thought their children were safe on New Alderaan. Leia says that her brother has ignored the warnings of his teachers and he knows the path he's taking. Luke meanwhile goes to confront Palpatine, who demands to know how he got into the sealed cloning labs, as Luke ignites his lightsaber, saying that he has come to prevent Palpatine from being reborn. Palpatine says that he wants to bargain, knowing that he will kill Luke now, or Luke can permit him to move into his body. Luke says that the man's power over him has been broken, and when he destroys the clones, his reign will end. Palpatine's body explodes in an energy as Luke destroys the labs, but it's too late as Palpatine is reborn in a younger clone body. Luke force pushes the young man down, reminding the gloating villain that he is a Jedi Master now. Palpatine grabs a lightsaber from the wall, wondering if Luke's vast knowledge has told him he has already been beaten. The two begin to duel, with Palpatine knowing that it's fitting that the Jedi's precious lightsabers be the thing that finally ends the Jedi delusion. As Palpatine continues drawing on his new strength, Luke locks blades with him, telling the Dark Lord that he has seen that ultimately the dark side will fail, but the villain calls him a fool for thinking himself strong enough to beat him. Palpatine disarms Luke, wanting him to take the consequences of his failure like his father before him. Palpatine stops, however, not wishing to kill Luke just yet, wanting him to submit to the dark side since it will break him, as he plans on going after Leia in order to regain his holocron as well as her unborn child. Chewbacca meanwhile slices R2 into the Falcon's comm systems, with 3PO hoping that he'll be careful with his friend since R2's regulators were burned out. Han knows, and that's why they are having trouble accessing the battle plans. He finally gets them up and running as 3PO tries to stop him from sending them. Han tells him to go and do something useful as Leia calls for him, wanting the droid to plug into the hyperspace transponder to monitor Imperial transmissions for any distress signals from the Devastators. On Calamari, Lando's soldiers know that something strange is happening to the world Devastators, with one thinking that Lando knows that Luke is doing something to sabotage them. The Sea Commandos breach the downed war machine as Commander Clev demands his men finish up the bypass for the master control computer. The power on the onboard factories is restored, so the bowels of the machine begin making more ships. The rebels battle stormtroopers as they board the machine, but below in the water, the recently made ships from the Devastator assault the rebels. The Millennium Falcon arrives, with Han thinking his codes would have shut down the machines, but they haven't, thinking Luke has betrayed them again. But Leia tells him to look since the Devastators are down, so the Imperial engineers must have figured out how to reroute power to the factories. 3PO tries to voice his opinion, but Han tells him to shut up, but the droid says that R2 has created newer codes that will allow him to take control of the world Devastators fully. Han knows it's worth a shot, wanting Sala and Chewie to take the Falcon as close as they can, as Leia doesn't know why Han is still down on Luke. Han just wants to get on with it, getting the new codes and sending them to Rebel Command, since they have 3 minutes to get out of the area. The codes work, slamming both Devastators into one another and destroying them. 3PO knows his old friend saved the day as R2 beeps an insult to 3PO, who knows that if it wasn't for him, Han wouldn't have known about the codes. Thanks to the codes, the other Devastators also crash into one another, stopping the assault altogether and saving Calamari. Han knows it's not over since the Emperor is back in action, as he apologizes to Leia for what he said about Luke, knowing that he never will figure out the Jedi. Leia knows that Luke is sacrificing himself for them and their children, and sometimes the actions of a Jedi make no sense to an ordinary man. Han finds himself in disbelief that he will be the father of a Jedi, knowing that ordinary guys sometimes do something right. The Falcon heads back to Pinnacle Base, meeting with Rebel Command to plan an assault on Biss. They know they need to launch a series of wave assaults on the world's intergalactic core as Mon Mothma calls the meeting to an end, wanting to resume the next day, telling everyone to be prepared. Leia retreats to her quarters, accessing the holocron of Master Bodo Bass, who asks how he can help Leia. Leia is shocked that he is actually responding to her, asking if he knows the future, but the Jedi says that the Force merely surrounds all of them and all of time, and he is within the Force and will speak of a prophecy written 1,000 years before Leia's life, one written by his own master. He recites a rhymed poem about a brother and sister who walk the sky and will take to the dark side and the light, with the sister carrying the future of the Jedi inside of her. He knows a Jedi killer wishes to tame her and Leia must do battle or the dynasty of all Jedi will come to an end. Above Pinnacle Base, the massive Super Star Destroyer Eclipse arrives as Leia senses her brother is near. Palpatine contacts the rebels from the ship, demanding Leia be handed over to him and he will discuss a truce with them. Leia knows that she must go, but Han won't let her endanger their child, but Leia Leia knows that he will let her go. Using the Imperial shuttle sent for her, Leia boards the Eclipse, immediately sensing the oppression with not a single glimmer of hope on the ship. Leia is taken to the Emperor, who demands she hand over the holocron. Leia says that she doesn't have it, having come for her brother, but Palpatine is angered that she still defies him, knowing that her child will be given to him and he will raise the child in the dark side, and at the appropriate age, he will take over its body as his own. Palpatine unleashes lightning on the woman, but stops, having something better for her to do. He tells Luke to turn his sister, so Luke confronts her, igniting his saber as he duels with her. Luke doesn't want to hurt Leia, but Leia knows that what has happened to him isn't final, wanting him to clear his mind and see the future where her child becomes a great Jedi, all because of his training. Luke feels the future, seeing what is to happen as he tells his sister to help him back from the dark side. Luke knows that he found the dark things his father had found, like the ability to control others, just like Ben warned him of. He tells Leia he knew he had to do it and had to know why his father chose the dark side. Leia knows that he knows what happened to their father now, so it's time for him to come home. Luke knows the power of control and destruction weren't the only things he found. He also found fear and isolation, things his father felt and even Palpatine now feels. The villain is enraged, finding that utter nonsense, unleashing his power on the Jedi as he says that Darth Vader was just a sick man in an iron mask. He knows that Luke can be stronger than him, demanding he break Leia and bring her to the dark side, but Luke refuses, knowing that he made a mistake when he thought he could save the galaxy by himself, but the way of the Jedi is not a solitary path. He knows his ally is the Force, and through his strength the evil will be lifted from his mind. Angered, Palpatine lashes out, but Luke proves the better duelist, cutting off the villain's arm. Luke intends on arresting Palpatine and he'll be interrogated by the rebellion, but Palpatine refuses to surrender, demanding the Jedi look at what is happening on the moon below. In orbit above Pinnacle Base, a giant force storm of raw energy appears, destroying the rebel fleet. Palpatine claims that he lives as energy and he is the dark side of the Force. Luke knows that he and Leia can stop him, having read his dark books and knowing that he has awakened a chaos even Palpatine himself cannot control. The siblings join their Force powers together, remembering the teachings of Yoda and Obi-Wan Kenobi, pressing the Force around Palpatine and turning the Force storm onto the Eclipse and Palpatine, both who were ripped apart by the Force. Luke and Leia race to the hangar, using a shuttle to escape as the Eclipse is completely destroyed by the Void, and with it, so is Palpatine. Luke tells Leia that he guesses that proved that one Jedi cannot conquer the dark side, but together they can. Leia says that during the joining of the Force with her brother, she felt her unborn child join them, knowing he's going to grow up to be a great Jedi. Luke knows that with the child and the holocron, this is the beginning for Leia, feeling great things coming, and the Jedi Knights will rise again.